Thanks for downloading Pave the Way Podcast. On this show, your host, Greg Helbeck, interviews the top minds in real estate, business, and personal development to help you crack the code so you can grow your business and, more importantly, grow your life. Get ready for another game-changing episode. If you want to learn how to master your day and become a productivity monster, download Greg's free guide on daily personal productivity for free at www.pavetheday.com. That's Pave the Day, spelled DAY.com. Now it's time for today's episode. Enjoy.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Greg Helbeck, and I have a legend on the podcast today, and he's also one of my friends. We met in the Multipliers event a couple months ago. And Mitch, it was really fun to sit down with you in Tulum and tell you how much your books and your work has really impacted me over my career so far.
It's always an honor when someone does something. You know, I have no idea of knowing most of the time who I'm reaching through these books or anything, and it's really nice to hear when someone's connected.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, if people aren't familiar with you, they're gonna really like your stuff at the end of this, because you got a great story and you wrote a great book. And that's how I found out about you. Someone on another podcast said, you got to check out this book by Mitch Stephen called Failing Forward to Financial Freedom. And I remember I picked that thing up. I read the whole thing cover to cover. It's an easy read, and you did a good job, like making it like the text is kind of big, and it's just easy to go through that book very, very quickly. It's not one of those hard to read books. And I read that thing, sent it to a bunch of my friends, and it's really helped a lot of us out. So it's cool to have you join us on the show today to talk about the topic of financial freedom, which you are definitely an expert on. So just to kind of kick things off, Mitch, you're a very established real estate entrepreneur. So a lot of our listeners are going to be able to really tap into a lot of your wisdom. So how long have you been actually involved in the real estate business for now at this point?
I have bought a property every 4 to 5 days in or about my hometown of San Antonio, Texas, for over 2 decades.
Wow. That's a lot of properties.
So it's about 100 houses a year, over 2,000 houses since 1996.
Wow. A lot of experience there. And I'm sure there's a lot of mistakes you've made and then a lot of big successes with those types of numbers. So
Just a few.
Yeah.
Just a few mistakes.
I know we were talking about some of those in Tulum together, offline, obviously. So my first question for you, Mitch, is, you've been around for a while. So when you were younger, because you've been doing this pretty much your whole adult life, what got you interested in financial freedom when most likely your peers went down other paths, especially because, when you grew up and when I grew up are two very different times. So the internet wasn't very popular probably 20 or 30 years ago, to say the least.
Well, so I was a late bloomer. People ask me, how did you get into real estate?
Yeah.
I like to tell them I had failed at everything else. It was the last thing left. So I didn't have a choice. The last thing, if it didn't work, I didn't know what I was going to do. So I really didn't find my butt with both hands until I was about 34, 35 years old. I had always been a hard worker. I'd always had the entrepreneurial business of the week or the month that I was trying to start.
Yeah.
While I was bartending at night, always either discovering it wasn't for me, or I wasn't any good at it, or I wasn't picking it up fast enough to keep from going under.
Yeah.
And mostly because I was undercapitalized. I was always on a shoestring budget trying to start a business, and from the grassroots up.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And what about, like, how did you first discover, like, did you see like a guru's ad, or did you see like a bandit sign? Like, what made you think after all these business ventures, like real estate investing? Because that's, it's more popular now, but back in the day, I'm sure it was a lot different.
The honest to God's truth is I had a love of my life. She left me for a rich gentleman rancher, which I couldn't even blame her. I'd have left me too for him. And I just said, that's it. This is never happening to me again. Pissed me off, but I was just mad at me. I mean, I couldn't even be mad. I couldn't even be mad at her for the choice she made, honestly, because I was the one letting everything down. And I just said one day, I said, I may have to spend some time in the woods, may have to be by myself for a period of time, if not a long period of time, but I'm not coming out of the woods until I know how to do it. And I just put my head down. It was kind of, sometimes you got to have that angst of I've had enough.
Yeah.
That's one thing I look for in my students. Like, I've had enough of this crap meter pegged over in the red.
Yeah.
I look for that because it's usually what it takes, because to get through some of these obstacles, both mental and learning curve and all that, you got to have some pretty strong conviction. And at some point in most people's life, at least in my life, in a lot of things I've read, people get to a point where they're just not going to take this crap anymore. And I don't care what happens. You can string me up, drag me through the mud. I'm not getting a job anymore.
So true.
That was the other thing that happened. I was limited to like $15 an hour, no matter how I worked, no matter how loyal I was, how much money I made the company or whatever. They never wanted to pay me over $15 an hour because I didn't have a college degree or anything. And I just finally looked in the mirror with all these other things that happened and said, if I can't go out in the street and make $15 an hour by myself, that's it. I'm done. I'm going to stay there till I figure it out.
Yeah. That's awesome. It's so true too. Cause like, I remember back when I was in high school, it was like, yeah, I was like a lifeguard, and no matter how hard I worked, $10 an hour, $12 and whatever it was. And it's just like, I just traded 8 hours of my life for like $80. Like, really, there's not another way to go out and make that money. And it's like, you made a good point that I want to touch on, because a lot of people, we actually talked about this on your show a couple of weeks ago. Like, a lot of people, they know what to do. They just don't do it, and a big reason for that. Yeah. They haven't had enough. Yeah. It hasn't hurt bad enough. Right. It's like, yeah.
Yeah. Have you had enough of people telling you what you have to wear every day, when you have to get up, when you can come home, how long you can have for lunch, how long you can have for vacation, when you can go watch your kids play soccer or football, how much money you can make, how much time off you can have. When you've had enough of that, then you're getting really close.
100%, because you'll obviously persist through those obstacles, which are inevitable, especially when you buy a house every 4 days for the last 2 decades, which is incredible. So it brings me to my second question to piggyback on this, is that you've been doing this for a while. You've built a lot of wealth for yourself and your family. So obviously, I heard this great saying, at every level, there's another devil. So my question for you, Mitch, as you've gotten more successful over the years, what has been the biggest mental roadblock that you had to overcome to keep getting to the next level financially? Because I'm sure your mindset you had to get your first $100,000 in real estate was different till you get your, then getting to your first million or whatever the case is. So what was like a mental block you might have had? And then how did you overcome that? Because I'm sure we have a lot of advanced listeners too listening who want to make sure they can get to that next level.
Well, the biggest one, I wish I would have got a grip on even what it was, because I didn't even know what it was, but I didn't possess it. But I didn't even know what it was that I didn't possess. But because I just, through my limiting belief system, the world was just flat and I knew it, and that's the way it was. But the truth of the matter is, it was about raising private money. That it didn't matter that I'd never done the business before, that it didn't matter that, I didn't have a long track record, or it didn't matter. I had a lot of things going for me. I always had good credit, had a good work ethic. I was always honest. I never filed bankruptcy, and I always, so I had some things going for me, but I just didn't think any wealthy people were going to loan little old nobody from nowhere doing nothing, any money.
Yeah.
Which is completely wrong. It was all about the deal. If the deal's structured right and the lender can feel good about loaning you against this piece of collateral, it doesn't matter who you are. Tall, short, skinny, fat, it doesn't matter. I mean, I use a very poor analogy. Charles Manson should have been able to get the money from prison with the deals I was bringing to the table.
Totally.
It didn't matter. Hey, warden, I want to borrow $50,000 on my $200,000 house. No, I'm sorry. Hey, warden, I want to borrow $50,000. The warden says, hey, Manson, screw off. You're crazy. We already know that. Yeah. No, I'm going to give you a first lien on a $100,000 house. And if I don't pay you, you can have the house. The warden says, guards, let him out. Don't hand him a pencil until you have your guns drawn, because we got to sign some paper.
That's so true. That's so true. And it's so applicable, because that when you start getting more successful and you need capital for deals, it's like, I remember when I raised my first, bit of private money, I was pretty young still. And I was like, who is going to give me this money for this house? And then I didn't even sell the like you said, the property sold itself first lien position, 10% interest or 12, whatever it was. No brainer, no brainer, especially with the basis I was in the deal at. So when it comes to private money now, what did you do? Obviously, we know that's a big limiting belief you had. How did you systematically get out of that? And then what do you do now to still raise capital for all these properties you're taking down and doing, whatever exit strategy on?
Well, today, like maybe right this minute, come the first of the month, I'll owe principal and interest payments on $26 million to private lenders.
Yeah.
Okay. That didn't happen overnight. These people have been with me for 10 and 15 and 20 years. And over the years, they've put more in, they've inherited money they gave me, and they referred me to their friends, because as the longer they went with me, and I never failed and I was never late, and the more confidence they got. And they looked up one day and they were, they had the majority, if not everything they had with me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're not laying awake at night worrying about it, because they understood that the worst thing could happen to them is that I paid them on time, and that probably the best thing that had happened is if I didn't pay them and they got all my properties because they were worth a small fortune. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So consistency, man. You can't fail those people.
Totally.
Because they're what makes it work. I don't mind losing my money. I will die before I lose their money.
Totally.
I will literally, I'll be this close to death before I let go. You know what I mean?
I totally get what you mean. And that is such a good practical tip, because I see a lot of people, they raise private money and then they don't understand what they're getting involved in, and they're doing these borderline deals, and they're very loosey-goosey with other people's money. And you said such a good point. I'd rather lose my money than their money, because when people know that and they see that over doing this for 2 decades, it's such a no-brainer for them to give you money and to get those referrals. So that's such a big tip for the listeners. If you want to get to that next level and you have issues closing on properties, the better you get at raising private money, it's a total game changer. I mean, you've taught a lot about it. I've learned a lot from you, and that's a great practical tip in terms of, overcoming those financial hurdles you hit. So your book, obviously, one of your books, you've written a few of them. It's the first one I read was called Failing Forward to Financial Freedom. And I think the reason that book resonated with me, and I'm sure it's resonated with a lot of people, is that you talk about your failures openly. You're not like one of these gurus on stage just saying, oh, I'm the best deal maker ever, and this is how I buy all these watches. You're very transparent about your journey. And I think that's really where you get a lot of people really get a lot of value from that. So question for you is, I know you've had tons of failures, but if you can recall maybe one of your biggest real estate failures and what you learned from that failure for the listeners. And I know you have a ton, so just pick whatever one you think might be the most relevant.
My biggest one, I borrowed $1 million from some private lenders, probably 3 or 4. I amassed $1 million. I loaned it to a land developer who in 2007 and a half, who abruptly went bankrupt, like after 4 months of borrowing my money. Of course, it was my private lender's money that I lent out.
Yeah, spread. Yeah.
But they had first lien rights. They had the collateral, but the land couldn't make any money during the recession. It was in a gated community with $1 million houses, and a half-acre lot was $185,000. And for the next 4 years, no one set foot on them. No matter if I offered them 0% financing or anything. So I had to write a check for $8,000 a month to pay my investors. Never call them, never talk to them, never anything. Just send a check and then by the end of 5 years, I had sold them or owner financed them all out and sold the notes. So for the first 4 years of that recession, I wrote a check for $8,000 a month every month.
Oh man.
Just to honor my good name.
That's a six figure a year check there without anything coming back.
Well, here's the good news. I had been such a good steward of my money and always bought assets with my money. I don't buy gold watches. I don't buy speed cigar boats. I don't buy. If I want that stuff, I'll rent it. I have one Rolex I bought for $3,500 that I bought when I flipped my 500th house. Okay.
Yeah.
I still own it today. Today it's worth $32,000.
Wow.
I know because I thought I lost it and I called my insurance company and they were going to give me a check. And then I found it and I had to call them back and tell them I found it. And so actually it fell off my arm in an Uber, and the Uber guy brought it back. Cost me $32,000. I'm the only honest Uber guy in the friggin' planet. Damn it. But, which is another thing. They brought the watch back. Did I just act like it was gone still? No, I did. I called my insurance company and said, you can stop the check. He brought it back.
Doing the right thing, having integrity. You can't make it up.
Yeah.
The right thing is always the right thing.
So the good news was I'd been such a good steward of my money that my cash flow was so tremendous that $8,000 a month didn't affect not one iota of what I did or how I lived or how I worked. It just affected how I grew. I just grew $8,000 a month less than I would have.
Yeah.
Still growing. It's growing $8,000 less.
Yeah, you had that little, it's like running around the lakes or something with a weighted vest on versus having no weighted vest on. You're still making progress, which is good. But if you were to go out there and buy the Bentley and everything on financing, it would have been a different story. So that's a good lesson for the listeners.
One of my commitments when I said I've had enough was I am only buying assets. I read a Kiyosaki book that explained to me clearly the difference between a good debt and a bad debt. I understood it perfectly, and that was it. I only bought assets. If it flies, floats, or faces the ocean, I rented it.
I love that. Flies, floats, or faces the ocean, I rent it. That's really applicable too, and people can. Everyone loves buying the fancy stuff, Mitch. You see it all online, I'm sure, on Facebook. Everyone's getting their condo. It's just, if you just let those assets pay for those liabilities, or especially if you rent them, you have no real downside with that, because if it breaks or something, you just give it back. It's like a tenant. Ask me how I know.
I mean, the most luxurious thing I've ever bought is this ranch that I'm at. I bought a ranch in Texas, but it has all these other benefits. Plus, I entertain my private lenders. I mean, when people come to my ranch and take a look around, I'm not a joke. They can't walk in here and go, this guy's just, joking around. No, it's real. So that's as close as it comes to being braggadocious. I don't even like that. I don't like standing in front of big fancy cars and everything. I had a couple of fancy cars. Y'all never saw them.
Yeah.
So it all goes back to the private lenders, and also private lenders take note. I'm loaning this guy, he wants to borrow money, and he's wearing a $50,000 watch, and he's a 30-year-old kid. I mean, and he's driving a Bentley. That's not good. I don't want to loan that guy that money. You know what I mean? Because the next thing is the cocaine and the dancing girls, and who knows where. You know what I mean? So I had doctors call me before. Like one called me. I had this guy for 20 years. He loaned me money. He goes, "Does anything bad ever happen to you?" Like I said, he was like, "Has a house ever burnt down?" I said, "Yeah, one of your houses burnt down." He's like, "Which one? Which one?" I said, "I don't know, Doc. It happened like 12 years ago." He goes, "I had a house burned down 12 years ago and you didn't tell me?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, why didn't you tell me?" I says, "Because it's none of your freaking business."
Yeah,
that's
right.
Not what you loan me to hear about.
Yeah, that's so true. And it eliminates the drama.
Well, I mean, I don't want to cause these people anxiety. I mean, there's already enough anxiety in the room. It's all on my shoulders anyways. So why would I go pollute their peace of mind by talking about this horrible thing that happened? We bought it at an auction, the foreclosure auction. Gonna go get insurance on it tomorrow. Well, the people that got foreclosed off burned it down that night, arson. So by the time I got it to the next day, they burned it down. I didn't have insurance.
Oh my God,
he goes,
what a disaster.
So what happened? I said, well, what I do remember is it was a $38,000 house that's why I paid for it.
Yeah.
He said, "So you lost $38,000?" I said, "No, I sold the lot for $25,000 owner finance, so I lost $13,000. He goes, and you never said nothing." I said, "No, because I did 4 houses that month. I if that house would have worked out or didn't have that loss that month, I would have made 70,000. Instead, I made I made 57,000.
Yeah.
It was still a good month, but I'm a firm believer. You handle your problems one at a time, right when they happen. Don't let them stack up, because one of these days it'll be time to move or go full speed or get this big bank loan at 3%, or whatever. And then they're going to go, well, damn, you got a lot of broken crap back here.
Yeah. You got to fix that.
You got to stay lean all the time. If you have problems, fix them now, with the possible exception of sometimes you can owner finance a problem that's just breaking even and hold on it for the years. And then an event will happen and it'll clear itself up. They'll either pay you off or they'll not pay you and you'll foreclose on them. And now the house is worth way more because it's been 5 years. Sometimes that's one thing great about property and seller financing. You can usually use seller financing to push your problems down the road while they're breaking even or taking it. If I could have seller financed that land for even any amount, but in $1 million neighborhoods, seller financing is not required. They're not looking for that, right? I got out of my wheelhouse. But if you can seller finance, you can make I could have made an $8,000 problem, a $2,000 a month problem. I could have just seller financed the property for a little less, and then,
They can spread,
I could have pushed, but it was the wrong. Raw land's like an alligator, man. It just eats your cash every month. There's nothing to do about it normally.
Yeah, that's so true. It's so true. And that's why a lot of guys don't like these land deals. And you actually started getting into the next thing I was going to ask you, which is when it comes to seller financing, you are definitely the number one person I know who does this niche very successfully. I mean, I've learned a lot from you just on that strategy alone. So, there's all these niches out there. There's wholesale, fix and flips, rental properties, you name it, it's there. Why do you like seller financing so much? And I'm not asking that like from an antagonistic standpoint. I just want to really find out what made Mitch really attracted to that niche, which even kind of rhymes. Because you are the king of it.
I didn't know. I mean, I learned all this stuff along the way. It's one of the most durable, dependable forms of cash flow on the planet. It's so durable. It booms in the recessions or the bad times. And you do good during the good times, but it booms in the bad times. We could talk about the ins and outs of that because it's a very interesting dynamic. But one is, I'm dealing with owners. A landlord has the responsibility and the liability of everything that breaks from the front mailbox to the back fence. When I sell or finance a house, and a landlord gets how much down? First month, last month's rent, like $3,000, $4,000?
$3,000 if you're lucky.
Yeah. I'm getting 15 to 20% down. I won't take less than 10% down. So I got this person in the house that has an owner's mentality. They put new roofs on, they repaint, they put in new windows, they put in pools, porches, patios, landscaping, sprinkler systems, concrete driveways or asphalt driveways when there was none. They did do all this stuff. I never had a tenant ever put a new roof on my house, my rent house. Never.
I just did that as a landlord. Tell you all about it. It was expensive.
So first of all, so there's that. Second of all, they give me there's way more of a commitment up front. And then as they do all these extra improvements to the house, they get more and more financially invested. It's their home, so mentally and emotionally, they're way more invested.
Oh, yeah.
And then I'm only responsible to receive the payment. And once it clears, there's no reason for the money to leave my bank account. When you're a landlord, you could collect 3 or 4 or 5 months worth of rent, and still I would be nervous. Can I spend the money? Because if the air conditioner breaks tomorrow and it's the middle of summer, I'm going to have to give $3,000 or $4,000 back. It might wipe out the whole 4 months of positive cash flow. I never knew if the money was mine or not.
Yeah, that's so true, and no one talks about that about rental properties. It's such a something people sweep under the rug when it comes to stacking rentals.
It's been kind of I'm not knocking landlords. There's been a lot of money made in the rental property business, right?
Yeah.
But if you're trying to make money between what you owe $500 and what you collect $900, you could be wiped out the whole year in one air conditioner unit.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Right. I understand how people can do it if they're buying houses in their IRAs cash and you're collecting $900, you don't know anything but taxes and insurance. I get how it can work. But if you're not there, then you're just making off the spread between what you collect and what you owe. Then really you're just in a forced savings plan, and it's going to take a long time for the appreciation to go up. I buy houses at X. I seller finance them right now. I'm averaging 4 days on the market with no signs, not even a sign in the front yard.
Oh my gosh.
Through technology.
So that's incredible.
So, and then I seller finance for 2X with 10% down. Let's say it's a $100,000 house, which is a cheap house. That's 10 grand in my pocket, and they still owe me $500 a month positive cash flow for 360 months, 30 years. That's 180 grand owed to me out in the future. This is the difference between a wholesaler who hasn't figured out how to raise private money and a guy that has figured out how to. I'm collecting like a wholesale fee up front, but I'm still owed 180,000. The wholesaler's collecting a fee that might not even be 10 grand up front. Might not even be that much, and he's done. So every wholesaler out there, listen to me. If you don't learn how to raise private money, you are losing about between $150,000 and $250,000 per transaction because you haven't taken the time to figure out how to raise private money. Now, if that doesn't get your ass off the sofa and out this year to figure out how to do it, then don't complain to me.
Yeah. That is like almost mic drop, even though we're in the middle of the podcast. So I want to dive into that for a second. So, all right. So there's so much to talk about
here. Computer, but it costs too much.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. We got to redo the show then. So when it comes to that, so you're taking the deals down, you're seller financing them, pretty sure the listeners are familiar. You're basically just turning around and you're creating a note with the borrower, and then you have private money you raise from
Let's do it like this.
Okay.
I find a house I can get for, and I'm just using some round numbers that I know. I know that these houses, the numbers might be a little low, but just look at the theory. Don't split hairs with me here. I find a house I can buy for $50,000.
Okay.
I go out and I borrow $52,000 from a private lender in about 7, 8, 9 days.
Okay.
Okay. Collateral only, non-recourse, 15-year AM, maybe a 15-year fully amortized, maybe a 15-year with a 10-year balloon, maybe a 15-year AM with a 7-year balloon. But anyways, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally. Yep.
Okay. So I borrowed $2,000 extra. Why? It costs about $2,000 to find a seller that wants to sell at 50% of what I can make.
Yep, totally.
So and I'm doing about 100 houses a year. So if I leave $2,000 in 100 houses every year, how much is that a year I'm leaving?
That's 200 G's,
man. 200,000. In 5 years, I've left $1 million worth of advertising laying around.
That's crazy. Yeah.
So I always borrow 2,000 over, and I'm gonna sell the house for 100,000 with 10,000 down. Now keep in mind, not only do I not have any of my own money in this, but I recouped my $2,000 in advertising. That goes in a different fund. It just keeps getting rejuvenated.
Yeah, it just keeps bringing you more deals.
Yeah, so I got to get my advertising of 15,000 or 20,000 in the bank one time, and then it just replenishes itself all the time. Then I pick up 10 grand for a down payment. I have no money in this house. That goes in my left-hand pocket.
Yeah.
It's my money.
Free money.
They still owe me $850 a month, and I owe $350 a month to my lender. I'm clearing $500 a month. For 30 years, that's $180,000 cash flow due to me, positive cash due to me over the next 30 years. Now the loans don't go 30 years, okay? So at some point, my people are not capable of refinancing. That's why they come and get a 10% 30-year loan from me, which, by the way, I have backed into the rents. And I understand that my 30-year note at 10% is about equal to what they're paying rent right now. Give or take a few bucks. Thing.
Yeah.
The question is, you want to be a renter your whole life, or you want to own this thing? Now, this rent's going to keep going up, but this is a fixed payment right here.
Yep. And that they could sell, and they own an asset, and they can, potentially sell at a profit,
So usually when they pay me off is not because they refinance, because my buyers are inherently flawed. That's why they're in my court to begin with. They either illegal aliens, have an IEN number, have bad credit, never really get straightened out. They got a cash business. There's some reason why they can't do it.
Get a bank loan, yeah.
So, but when they go to sell the house, they list it with a realtor. Realtor finds a new loan buyer. And that's when I get paid off. Okay, but I digress. So I'm making $500 a month positive cash flow, of which I am responsible for nothing except collecting the payment or possibly a foreclosure. If I have to foreclose, I averaged 12% down. So in a $100,000 house, I've already collected $12,000. You can fix a house with $12,000. You can't fix a house with $1,500 first month's rent and $1,500 a deposit equal to the first month rent.
No.
You won't even pay for the carpet.
No. Yeah.
All right. And so here I am going down the road. Now I have over 300, let's just use 300 as easy math. I have 300 people that owe me a payment every month, and I average just under 500, but call it 500 a month times 300 every month. How much do I positive cash flow?
I mean,
$150,000
a month on reoccurring. That's residual. That's not active income. Yeah. That ain't a bad life.
Plus, I picked up about $1 million worth of down over 10%. I picked up $3 million to make that happen.
Yeah, literally. Yeah.
Or $1 million or $1 million, whatever it is. I got paid a crap load to create this $150,000 a month. And guess what? That $26 million worth of debt is non-recourse collateral only, because I'll look every single one of my investors in the eye and say, look, I won't let you in over 65% of what I can owner finance this house for. That's a pretty protected position, isn't it?
Huge.
But I only average borrowing 58%. So people are giving their money like $58,000 loan on $100,000 OFV, owner finance value, based on the rents. So I look them in the eye and say, and I'm paying you 8%. Okay. Now I have two rights every day. I look at my investors right in the eye before they loan me money, and I tell them this right to their face. I have two rights every single day of my life. One, I can pay you as agreed. Two, I can walk over my position in this house any day I want. Do you understand? They go, yes. I'll take that $100,000 house for $65,000. Walk it over tomorrow. I say, no. And I've never given a house back in my career, over 2,000 houses. I never filed bankruptcy. I never filed Chapter 7, never Chapter 11. When I have a problem with my houses, I eat it, because if you want to lose your private lenders, just start giving them houses, doctors and lawyers, start giving doctors and lawyers houses.
Yeah, they're not interested in that. Yeah.
They don't want it.
No,
give
they
a
want the interest.
Go give a 70-year-old lady a house that's worth $100,000 more than she loaned. She don't want it.
She don't want that. No, she wants your check. She wants her fixed check, and then she just wants it
in the mailbox. That's it. She wants to live out. She don't want any of these hassles, the stress.
That's amazing.
So my point is, in a recession, what happens?
In a recession,
can we agree that banks close or at least stop lending in a recession?
Yeah, they contract. Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah. What happens to the price of houses when they contract?
They go down.
Yeah, because most people have to borrow money to buy a house.
Yeah, that's their funding source dries up.
Yeah, so no one can sell a house now because it's only going to cash buyers or people that are very astute or have personal relationships with them. So the prices drop in San Antonio. $55,000 houses dropped down to $27,000 on the lesser parts of town in 2008, 2009. Do I need a bank to buy these houses? No, I got private money. I'll buy all of them I want. So I'm out there buying a house a day in the recession. A house a day. Easy peasy. Buying $27,000 for a house that used to sell for $55,000. And what happens when no one can buy a house? What kind of house are they moving into?
They're moving into a crappier house if they can't afford that.
No, moving into a rental house. They can't borrow money for a crappy house, because it's even harder to borrow money on a crappy house.
Oh yeah. Oh, for sure it is. Yeah. More red tape.
So look here. Everyone turns into a renter. What happens to rents in the middle of a recession when everyone is forced to rent because banks aren't loaning? There's pressure put on rents, so the rents go up. What did I tell you? My sales price, my owner finance sales price is based on what? It's based on the rents.
Based on the rents, and it's fixed.
And I have the only appreciating house in the middle of a recession because I'm offering owner finance and my payments are based on what the rent is across the street. And if the rents are going up across the street, so is the owner finance price of my house. So I was buying a $55,000 house before the recession for $27,000 in the recession and seller financing it for $63,000 in the middle of the freaking recession.
That's unbelievable. That is unbelievable. And that's
my bankers know they're from Harvard and Yale. And I've been telling them this forever, that this is how it's going to work when the recession hits. They go, no, you're going to go under. They finally call me and go, Mitch, how can you still be booming when everyone around you is collapsing? I said, I've been trying to tell you, it is the weirdest dynamic about seller financing in the world, but it works in your favor during a recession or even during COVID.
Oh yeah, right. With all the crap going on, you were probably fine, right? With all the
more than fine. My only problem was getting a little harder to find products because people didn't want to get close to you.
Yeah.
They didn't want to leave their house. They didn't want to let you in the house. They didn't.
Yeah. That is unbelievable, Mitch. Now, question on that, and this you just really unpacked that. I'm sure the listeners are very grateful for your in-depth detail there. So, seller financing. So I'll give you an example. Let me
say one thing before we go. I want to wrap up the thought. So do you go broke? When do you go broke? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
it's fine.
When do you go broke if you do good in the good times and you boom in the bad times? You go broke if you don't have integrity because lawsuits will break you.
Yes.
You go broke if you don't conform to some federal and state regulations because they'll crush you.
Yeah.
You would go broke if you over leverage. For example, I could call an 80-year-old lady right now and say, I need $150,000 on a house that's only worth $100,000, and she'd give it to me. I'm on the way to being broke. Unless you bought some other asset with the extra money. But that's not what happens to people that go under. They over leverage and borrow all this money, and then they go get a condo at the beach or a boat or you know what I mean? And when the tide rolls over, they go under carrying all these toys. So the last thing is you just don't over leverage. And I have a rule. I never let my investors in over 65% of the OFV. The OFV is a formula based on the rents that I back into to establish that my buyer's principal and interest, taxes, insurance, and servicing fee payment is about equal to what they're paying in rent. I already know they can afford it. I already know the whole neighborhood can afford this payment. Why? Because the whole neighborhood's full of people that are making that payment.
Yeah, exactly. It's based off the rent.
Yeah, and it's not an MAI appraiser. It has the owner finance value based on the rent is a value unto itself. It has nothing to do with what the house is across the street. Because look at in the recession, I told you I was buying previously $55,000 house for $27,000. Owner financed it in 4 days for $63,000. Well, how did it appraise? It didn't need to appraise. I'm the financier. It don't need to appraise. The guy across the street paying $1,000 rent has to understand that he's better off to pay $1,000 in own across the street.
Totally. And you're calling the shots.
I don't need an appraisal. No. I don't need an appraisal. So get this. I don't need a bank on the front end to buy the house, and my buyer don't need a bank to buy my house because I'm financing him. I don't need a bank at the time when the banks are closed. I don't need them at all.
You don't need a bank. Is that why they call you Mitch Be the Bank Stephen?
That's where they come from. I don't need a bank when they're open, but I damn sure don't have to beg them or worry when they're closed, because when they're closed, everybody's my customer.
100%. And the demand just keeps going up there, Mitch. That the owner financing, I mean, it's such a good strategy, and people, it's not talked about enough, honestly. And obviously, everyone's thankful for people like you who talk about this stuff. So, my follow-up question on that, Mitch,
what's the downside? What's the downside of owner financing?
Yes,
you don't get appreciation and you don't get depreciation. Okay, so let's talk about appreciation. I buy my house for X and I owner finance it for 2X in less than 4 days. How much appreciation do you freaking landlords want? Do you want to annualize that? Just get out your damn calculator and see if it has enough numbers to annualize that. You know, you doubled your money. You went from 50,000. Well, you don't even have any money in it. So really,
it's all free. It's all house money. Yeah.
But if you just take 50,000 increase in your in your financial statement every 4 days and annualize that time 365 days, It's a crap load of money. I don't know why you landlords think you got to wait around for 10 years to get some appreciation. I'm getting my appreciation like right now.
Yeah, totally.
Okay,
and that's the thing. The depreciation. Yeah.
I don't get any depreciation on this house, and there's nothing to do about that, right? Wrong. I take the money I make from the seller finance strategy, and I go buy in short period of time, I go buy a $500,000 mom and pop mini storage place or $1 million mini storage place. Now I got $1 million worth of depreciation. Boom, boom, boom.
So you take your seller financing profits and you put that into some commercial real estate, and then that's where you get the real depreciation on the big deals, not on the little small deals.
Yeah, the small deals, screw depreciation. In a few months or a year from now, I'm going to get something that I can depreciate the hell out of because it's going to be big. I put $1 million down. I finance $1 million with the bank. I got $2 million worth of depreciation, one move.
Boom, right there on a big deal. That's gonna that's a needle moving deal too. It's not going to make you $200 a month. That's a serious commercial asset that you can manipulate the value on based on obviously the rents and expenses. So I think you debunk that myth.
You could be an apartment complex, whatever. Because here's the thing. Yeah. Seller financing is not the end of the step. There's one-time money. I'm quoting Jack Bosch here from the book Forever Cash. There's one-time cash, which is a flip or a wholesale. Find a property, move it, get paid one time, done.
Done.
Then there's temporary cash. That's me. I get paid $10,000 up front. I collect $500 a month for X amount of years. Sooner or later, they pay me off. It's over, but it's temporary. That cash flow is temporary because notes have expiration date.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have to take the money that you make from the one-time cash events and the temporary cash events, and you have to move into a forever cash scenario, which is something you probably rent or a business that you buy that, you know what I mean, that is run by someone else or by a CEO, something that runs without you preferably.
Yeah.
At least in the end, it'll run without you. Maybe in the beginning, you kind of manage it yourself like an apartment company, but you get enough of it, you're hiring someone to move in. And so I choose boat and mini storages, self-storage. That's what I buy. I started in 1991 with 13 little boat storages on dry land where they pulled into my garage. They shut the door. You can't see it. They went home. And when they come back next weekend, they open the doors and hook up their trailer and drag it to the lake across the street and put it in. Okay. I bought 13 of those in 1991. I now have 1,300 doors that owe me $100 a month. Do that math. That's $130,000 a month.
Holy, just on freaking, there's just storage, like boat and mini storage facilities.
Yeah, on 10 by 10 squares, 10 by 20 squares, 10 by 30 squares, 15 by 40 squares, So, and the debt over the years has gone down till expired. And the rents have gone up, and will continue to go up till the dawn of time. In theory, I don't have a crystal ball and I don't know, but I assume there might be some divots in there somewhere. But over the next 20 years, $100 might turn into $250 a month.
You get a little pay raise.
Yeah, and my debt's gone.
Oh yeah, it's free and clear. That's house money.
Yeah. So it's all about I see these people addicted to flipping, and it's a job. Really, it's a glorified job, well-paying job, good job. Yeah. But if you don't get yourself out, to me, it didn't take me long to figure out. Yeah, I like that $50,000 check, but after about 4 of those a year, I don't need any more money to finish out the year, and all I'm doing is bumping my tax bracket out through the moon. You know what I mean? Yeah. I only need about $200,000. I can eat and drink, go anywhere I want, do everything I want. So I said, from now on, I focused on cash flow. I got to figure out where my $200,000 a year is coming from, because that's what it takes to run my family and my life. That's it. And then everything else is dedicated to cash flow, and ultimately forever cash flow.
And that's way you articulated it is amazing.
You look up one day and you're making $1 million a year, or $1 million or $2 million a year. Now I understand right across the street or a mile from here is 20 people that could wipe their butt with my financial statement. I get that, but there's a lot of people who'd like to be where I'm at.
Yeah.
Okay. So in all humbleness, I know exactly where I'm at. I know people right now that are worth 100 times more than me. That's beside the point. I'm talking to the people that aren't where I'm at and would like to get there.
Yeah.
I got a hand down trying to help those people up. I got a hand up to those other billionaires trying to say, how do you make $1 billion? I mean, I'm starting to think where maybe I could at least understand how many zeros is in that number now.
That's so true, Mitch. I mean, you're just a wealth of knowledge, and it's just, I'm glad we had this conversation about owner financing. We really drilled into the back half of our show, because this is something that really not a lot. I think I've had one or two guys talk about that on our show, but nobody into the depth that you do it, into the knowledge that you have on this topic. And one more question on that, and then I want to definitely respect your time. We're getting towards the top of the hour here. Is, so I'll give you one example. I'm in my market is in New York, so I'm my buy and sell assets in New York. So are there any areas in the country, most people listening are in the U.S., where you say seller financing might be a little challenging, and then that would probably require them to do that in a different area? Or is it a pretty much tried and true principle all across the U.S., depending on how you do it?
I mean, there's always a place for seller financing. Yeah. It's really, but it has a lot to do with the values of the properties.
Yeah.
When people in New York or Los Angeles are paying, $800,000 for a 1,300 square foot 3-bedroom house, I mean, it's hard to charge 10% or 8% or 9% on that and make it work. You know what I mean? So it really works where there's more affordable properties.
Yeah.
But the biggest kicker is you have to be in a state where the foreclosure process is in the mortgage holder's
lender's favor.
Like if someone in New York doesn't want to leave their mortgage, they can be in your house for a long friggin' time. If they
5 years, 5 to 10 years.
Los Angeles wants to do it. In Florida, my God, you can't hardly get anybody out because most of those states are judicial foreclosures. So what happens, they got to go in front of a judge, and then the judge just legislates from the bench. Doesn't go by the rules or the regs or anything in the book. They just do what their little old liberal heart, bleeding heart wants to do. Like one time I had a student that said, I'm in New York and I have all the foreclosure, everything is cut and dried. And then the judge goes, well, she's pregnant and it's going to be Christmas in 2 weeks and it's snowing. So we're going to give her an extra 2 months in the house. I was like, where the hell is that in the law? Where did it write that?
Yeah.
I mean, who do you think you are, judge? Like you just supersede the law. Of course, if you say that, she'll get a year in the house.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. So the deed of trust. So you want to be in a deed of trust state, basically. You want to get out of a non-judicial state for this to be very efficient, right?
Now you want to be in a non-judicial foreclosure.
Non-judicial.
Or sometimes, like in Florida, they believe so strongly in land trusts that there is some other ways to paper up that'll give you a better chance. Yeah. But here's the problem. It's not cut and dried because any judge can rule in a judicial foreclosure. They rule however they want. Yeah. If they want to say this is a disguised sale, it don't matter. Even if it isn't, you're going to have to live with whatever the judge says.
Yeah. That's a good note for the listeners. If you're in an area where maybe it's not the best to do it in your state, you can always do it in another state. It's simple. Georgia, you got Texas, you got, Arizona. There's a lot of these Sunbelt states are more friendly.
It's called the flyover states.
When you're flying.
When you get on the East Coast and you get on a plane and you fly over to the West Coast, all that stuff in the middle, those people still got a brain.
Yeah, right. You're flying over all the states you should be seller financing in. Yeah, it's much more business friendly down there, to say the least, coming from a guy who lives in California and operates in New York with all the tomfoolery that goes on up in those states. It's quite difficult to be a business owner. But
let's talk about this for a second.
What?
If you live in one of those states that's not conducive to seller financing, it's a little more challenging to do business from afar. Like you live in Los Angeles, but you're going to go set up shop in Atlanta, Georgia, or wherever. Yeah. Okay. It's a little more challenging, and you will need to probably spend some time in that region to develop a feel and a sense and a smell and some boots on the ground, whatever. But you'll actually be creating a real business because you'll have to create a business that runs without you or like a CEO. So while it's a little more challenging, the reward of being successful in running a business that way from afar is the ultimate what we should have all been doing. There's a lot of people listening to this call that the first thing you got to do is like move 150 miles away from where your market is so that you will be forced to learn how to operate like a real business.
That's so true. It's so true. And that's why I like doing deals remotely, Mitch. I'm glad you made that point. because you have to use the who, not how method. You can't be like, oh, I'm just going to drive there right now and meet this tenant or meet this owner. Like you have to, who's going to be the person to help me? And then you can kind of be the grandmaster behind everything. So that is a great nugget. I'm so happy you added that, because that obstacle or the perceived obstacle there can actually really be your biggest asset, especially when you're out of the day to day and you can't even get in a car and drive to Atlanta and LA. That's a process. So that's a great.
I know a couple of people who had gotten successful enough to try it this way. They got successful enough. They're willing to take a chunk of money that may or may not be there at the end of this experiment.
Yeah.
And like, they're going to go Airbnb in the Bahamas for a year and see if they can make it work.
Yeah.
To make it work.
The test.
To put their ass in a crack so deep that they got to figure it out, or they're going to lose their block
business.
of money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good challenge. That's a real good challenge.
And
it's
believe me, they start getting creative and start learning. Let's put it to you this way. Let's don't say this. Let's say let's say you. If I put you in prison right now in an 8x10 cell.
Yeah.
Instead, but you're allowed to have a computer and a cell phone, would you figure out how to flip houses?
Oh, absolutely. I would have a deal within 30 days for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it takes a lot for a lot of people. It takes being put in that environment and kind of locking themselves up to go, I got a choice now. That's how I became an entrepreneur. I walked out and said, if I'm not worth $15 an hour, the only thing I had to stop myself from doing mentally was not give in and get a job. I knew if I said, there's no job, you got to eat, that this body and this brain would figure it out. But you cannot have a job. That was my challenge. I told myself, and I drew a line in the sand, said, you cannot get a job. What are you going to do now, asshole?
Whatever it takes. Whatever it takes.
You're going to figure it out.
100%.
This is the most magnificent piece of work ever. This little unit up here, combined with all the capabilities of this down here, given just enough protein, just enough water, if you can keep your sanity, this will figure every single thing out. Everything.
100% agree with you there. And it's a supercomputer. You got to use it. A lot of people, they take everything for granted and they don't have that mindset of resourcefulness.
You get that comfort where you can go, well, I'm hot and tired. I'm going to go sit in the air conditioned house. Well, we don't, what if there is no house? Now you got to get acclimated. And after a year, it ain't so hot.
Totally. You get used to it. It becomes your new standard. Next thing you know, you're buying a house every 4 days for 20 years. So Mitch, man, I could talk about you. I could talk about this for hours. It was an honor to have you as a guest. I want to definitely respect your time. So as we get to the end of the hour here today, I want to have you give the listeners an opportunity to kind of talk about anything you have going on, promote anything you have. You have a great YouTube channel you've been building up. I've been watching a lot of your videos. So what is the best way for people to get into your world? Like maybe a web address, and then the best way for them to check out a lot of your content and courses. And if they wanted to consider having you be their coach, the best way for them to do that as well, if that was a fit.
Well, look, I give away a ton of free stuff. You can find my podcast. You can find my YouTube channel. You can find almost anything in the world about me over at 1000houses.com, 1000houses.com. But I just launched my YouTube channel. So you go to 1000houses.com/YouTube. I'm giving away a 10-minute segment on any random subject that I can think about every workday for the next year. So 5 days a week for the next year, I'm going up there and spilling my guts by topic, by topic, by topic, by topic, by topic, by topic. And I love it. It doesn't matter which one you click on. I'm giving you everything I got for 10 minutes.
It's good. I'm telling the listeners right now, you got to check Mitch out on YouTube because he's putting out the good content. I personally, I'm a subscriber to you. I'm one of your friends too. So it's cool to see, someone doing very well. So yeah, definitely check out his YouTube channel. He's putting a lot of effort into it too. You're going to see it's very professionally done. So Mitch, we'll make sure we have this, the links there, 1000houses.com and then 1000houses.com/YouTube. Have people connect with you there. Mitch, it's always an honor to talk to you, man. I'm glad we got to connect a couple months ago in Tulum, and I really appreciate your valuable time, and I hope you have a phenomenal rest of your day.
All right, Greg, I appreciate you too. Thanks for having me on, and I appreciate anyone and everyone who takes the time to listen to this. Who would have thought Who would have ever thought, let alone Mitch Stephen, anyone would pay attention? I wrote a couple of books. I'm sure there's some English teachers rolling over in their graves right now.
They're like, what? How is that possible? No, Mitch, you do a lot of good stuff out there, man. I can, seeing you from afar and being a follower of your work, and then now one of your friends. It's amazing what you got out there, man. You're impacting lives. So keep it up. And I know this interview is going to help a lot of people. Take care.
Bye now.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Pave the Way Podcast. We hope you got value from today's episode. Make sure you download Greg's free guide on daily personal productivity for free at www.pavetheday.com. That's Pave the Day, spelled DAY.com. If you have any questions or want to reach out, head over to www.pavethewaypodcast.com. We'll see you on the next episode.